and then pass to all the audience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's maybe typical, at least from my perspective, is that I've been working 25 years as an architect, and which is not so long for an architect yet, but there's always been a discussion when we are designing something with students that should we put the building long side to the wind or the short side, but nobody never thought about the corner. So it's a new information for me, at least, that I heard first time today, that the corner is the solution. Of course, if it was a car, you would never drive it sideways or like this, but this is very typical. So you kind of forget the very normal, everyday rules when you talk too far in your own field. That's why it's nice to follow this kind of information bits that are coming. But otherwise, I think in our area we have this problem that we don't have this kind of material banks available, and that needs to be solved somehow, because it would be even the picture already there was very interesting with all the windows and doors. So we just don't have it. We have too efficient recycling system that doesn't allow us to take what we need in between the demolition and the burning in Sweden or somewhere else, where they are driven, I don't know, in bits and pieces. So we have tried many times with the local big companies, recycling companies, Iris and Östbo, to have some material from them that they say that we can't be there because it's too dangerous to start walking around with the helmet and the machines working, and say that we can. It's too expensive to have a person to do that job in Norway.
I think the last sentence there is quite important. In Norway, hours cost money and materials don't. That's the thing. Like, we don't value our resources high enough. But it's going to change. So then it becomes, there's this shift. On Monday, I was in another gathering. Somebody told me that in the 1950s, it still made sense to recycle in Norway because of the value of the materials. But in 1916s afterwards, the hours have become too expensive. So now we just throw away and buy something new.
Maybe. Yeah.
I did the talk.
Well, I think it has been an interesting hour spent there to have views on both energy saving but also the use of materials. One tiny element I noticed was the saying in Estonia you had some types of wood which were not as high quality for technical purposes. That reminds me about ways of using different types of wood in the buildings. Of course, traditionally you have the knowledge of using curved elements and adding those into the building, which are not where you need a skilled craftsman, etc. But another type of wall construction, which especially in Sweden, I think, but also has been used in Norway, for small pieces of wood, kubbehus, that's stacked together on not alongside the wall, but on the vertical side of the wall, putting it horizontally. So it's very strange, but that it gives a kind of thermal insulation to the wall, but of course you have to cover up the ends. But this type of structure actually we use, as I said, in Sweden quite a bit, and some examples in Norway. The thing is that we should use our brains to start to look into the materials in another from another point of view, actually. So that's a good input. Thank you.
Okay, Arnstein.
I would say just I'm very pleased to have overview of all these things. Really hard to, a lot of things to think of. I like in Norway is some kind of nature and architecture is still kind of really, not still, but always have been, if we are looking around, is so connected. And it feels quite a warm, warm feeling that, and really these Bodo new planning proposal and things, I think really be careful, really. I'm not the guy who should say that, because you know that, but it's, I'm looking, I'm really feels totally different of what I'm driving around here than the future shows. And that's really great seminar. Thank you.
I should start with an apology as I didn't introduce myself earlier. I'm Tom Davis and I'm here in capacity as an advisor for the County Council here and also through ICOMOS. The two things I wanted to take away from today, which Arnstein made me think about this morning and also Ulla, were where we find this kind of tacit knowledge about building, that we did some work last year working on looking at intangible heritage and the resource that Historialag or local heritage groups in Norway give us in their accounts, that there's kind of a higher level of intangible heritage accounts that talk about histories of place and cultural memory and things. And a lot of what we're talking about today as to how building traditions work and how they function with environment is in that kind of, in those accounts. So yeah, I was thinking both your talks this morning made me think a bit about that. And the other thing is how, with all the work towards a historic environment law in Norway and what we have in the UK, and sort of progressively that we're moving from kind of a monumental view in heritage to conservation is taking us back to historic environment and how that connects to sustainability and recycling. So a kind of coming full circle in the sense of a circular economy. So, would you like to add anything, Ulla? Anyone else? Okay.
I think it's been an interesting day for me as well. A lot of things to learn from each of the lectures. And one thing that strikes me is this field is quite diverse. We think when we talk to other people, I think what we do is kind of a narrow perspective, but it's not. It's very diverse. And I've been thinking about the DREAM project for some time now, and it kind of sums up many of the lectures today, because I think maybe some of the barns that Arnstein was showing us in the beginning today, we could scan them inside with a 3D scanner, and you could produce a module from recycled wood that fits into the barn that can make it possible for us to use the barn as a new house. Understand? So I think that's a way to put all these things together. So we try to work out the project like this in the east and southeastern part of Norway right now. But it's a bit difficult to get it airborne, so to say. But I think that's a possibility, and maybe you should make a few of the modules and ship up to Arnstein, and then we have a project going. Okay, but thanks for a very interesting day, and there's been a lot of things to learn, and I think it would be interesting to keep up the connections with the Estonian colleagues and try to learn from each other. That's important. Thanks.
Thanks everybody much. It was yes really interesting, and Norwegia, it's not so far from Estonia. I am very glad new contacts and real contacts. They are very important, and to meet here and to hear local solution. It gives also big energy and good perspective also for us to Estonia, and I hope also opposite. So I hope for future cooperation and keeping going this kind project together. Thanks.
You first.
Okay.
I can help, yeah. Ladies first. For me, Sami's lecture was absolutely wonderful. I have been a small fan of all of the when it was Casa Grande and Rintala in the beginning, and exactly this idea of the black, the remarks on black. I will quote that. Yeah.
Some short comment about wood, forest and woods, and reuse. And it's very interesting, the perspective that there is not enough wood. But at the same time, we have a special responsibility because of the heritage we have and the resources we have to care to both know them and take care of them in a good way. And when we look at the resources we have, both as Pasi and Gisle also talked about, to look at the local and regional resources, that also reduces transportation. There's a lot of traditions here, like using the hardwood, like aspen and birch and so on. And there are actually the research, forest research in Norway said that the best aspen trees are in this region, in Salten region. And they have been used a lot in tradition. Like an old man said to me once that he was using it all connected to water. Yeah, they use aspen. And then I knew that from before that there was aspen, but I wanted him to tell the story. And then he was to the water mill, and led the water to the mill. And then this 82-year-old man, he turned to me and said, well, I asked, aspen is a good material. Yes, it will stay there, man. It will stay there, man after man, he said. And this I often think about when I look at this kind of materials. And it's very good for facade. You know, it can be a difficult tree, but you have to know the place they grow. Some places they are perfect for materials, other places not. But this is a big resource in this region, and there are almost no one who uses that. It goes to the mouth of the moose, actually. So it's very sad. So this is kind of resource we have, and there are many examples on that. So interesting that you mentioned that. When it comes to the reuse, we also had a project. We are talking about reuse. We are going to we're writing a project about this now, also including Sami. So we will try to at least have some focus on that, how to deal with that. It's also a difficult thing with long distance. But we're looking at some group of products and materials that can maybe be easy to and need. And maybe we can use for example, the empty barns in the villages that are after all standing there. Maybe we can use them to prolong the use of the buildings, cheaper than rent in the center, maybe. Just as an idea, just some practical ideas. So it's inspiring to hear that people, what they are doing, and other places they are doing that. So we should be able to do that. So it was very inspiring to hear all the speeches, and very grateful for that people took part in this.
Absolutely. I'm so happy that all these presentations were looking at historical environment and building from a slightly different angles. Starting from the first speech, it has been all just marvelous, actually. So it is exactly how it is, that actually the power of knowledge is when different views, but the same idea of keeping this historic environment are together. So I think it was good. not bad. But at the same time, you said once that one old lady has said about one old barn that it has served his time. So sometimes old buildings need to be reused in some other purpose.
Yeah, it was Christine in Mesvær, the village of Mesvær in 1994. And she said that to me, and my back froze because it gave me this perspective that I couldn't find elsewhere. The old culture, that you actually obligation to take it down when it's not in use anymore, and then reuse, of course. This there down to that you use it for secondary purposes and so on. So she didn't understand that we wanted to take care of the barn when there was no cattle anymore and no one wanted to use it for that. So, and her brother was the one that talked about man after man. So there were two interesting siblings in that house. A lot of knowledge, yes.
And that actually means that it is the tradition which keeps the buildings. In that demolishing and building renew, it is a tradition that actually should be kept, which means cultural continuity. And yeah.
I would like to add a small comment to that in the tacit knowledge and immaterial, that culture and intangible knowledge. Because, we are on a project trying to study the tangible and intangible elements when doing studying a building for protection and analyze it, and also bring in the intangible knowledge. And I think actually what had not been in my mind earlier, we always talk about the carpenter and his tacit knowledge and all these elements, but as you mentioned, the culture behind the building or the building culture, or in a wide sense, that should be studied and understood when working on the old buildings, not simply putting down, how to handle the axe, and not only writing down, having the ceremony when the main roof beam is put there, but also the culture of using the buildings, as you said. It served its time, but then, keep the materials, the timbers for another purpose. All these kind of studies, I think, are of high value, actually, and should be understood and brought forward to other people. Thank you.
Final words to Sami too, yeah.
Okay, but yeah, of course I can end with the sauna reference to this, what you said now, because sauna is coming back to Norway the last 10-15 years really strongly as a tradition, and in Estonia and Finland we have had it kind of ongoing in spite of the church and the politics, and now it's about making saunas, and it's an interesting thing where you have to use the traditional knowledge how to make a good sauna, at least as a starting point. But the first one that came like 5-10 years ago in Norway, they were not so good saunas. But now you can see already that people are learning quickly of how, at least what not to do, and now it's getting better and better. But it's just one small fraction of area of buildings, one type that's coming back now, and which is very much based on a lot of tradition, how the air flows and how you dry it afterwards, and what materials you use for benches and floor and roof and everything. So that kind of, it's just what we are doing at the moment. That's why I'm observing a lot, even how the ovens are made and everything. So, and it's a Norwegian question at the moment because the bathing culture is having a renaissance here. So it's an interesting example of how traditions can come back also really strongly. And then you suddenly need that information, and if you don't have it, you have to reinvent the whole thing, and it can be a painful process. There are a lot of foggy buildings.
before Ave, as Estonian, can comment on the sauna tradition, I want to say that, but as you indicated, we also had this sauna tradition here. It's gone a long time now, but in Helgeland, just south of Arctic Circle, there are some old saunas still alive. They don't use it as saunas anymore, but they're still standing there. So it's quite interesting. They're not far away. So as Bodø. So but now there is a comment from Estonia on.
All these sauna traditions are locally different, and exactly because of the environments and so on. But I just have to mention that UNESCO sauna heritage is intangible heritage. First that was listed was Estonian Võro sauna tradition. So yeah, Savu sauna tradition, and that is. But exactly, although it is sauna tradition, buildings and smoke sauna and so on, it is intangible heritage listing. Yeah.
If I could finalize, if we should finalize, just have a small story about resources, and it's again about materials and about aspen trees, just to show how extreme, I might say, it can be in the older times. Exactly 100 years ago, there was a couple who lived north of Fauske, just 100 kilometers from here, had a small farm. They didn't have much money, and they had aspen forest. And the aspen were not so old, so still not used, could not be used for buildings. And the wife was complaining their room, the small barn where they had the cattle, were very bad, and she was struggling because there was women who were the farmers then, and she asked her husband to build a new barn, and then he started to work on the aspen. So a couple of years he was cutting branches and so on, following this aspen, and it took as much as 16 years before he thought the aspen were big enough and could be used, and then he cut them down and used them to build a new barn. But then they had become so old, so his wife used the barn only for 1.5 years before they gave up. And sadly now this barn had been taken down some few years ago. But it shows how people in the older times were actually using their resources as well as they could, and how they were planning. This is extreme kind of planning, that you have this forest and you don't have money, then you actually do it. It's just a kind of one of many small stories that it's a picture of how people have been handling their life and the materials. So 16 years is so when the next sauna Sami will be, you can start now, and 16 years you have. Yes. Sorry, thank you.
The woman was really patient, I should say. The woman was really patient, I should say. From the web, Gabriela Semova-Kolevaha said, "Let me thank you for the opportunity to attend and learn so much and interesting things about your philosophy and views on the use and reuse of heritage and materials. I wish you much success and see you again." And Tiina Viik, that is Europa Nostra Sweden. Is she current president? Yeah, she was president in Sweden, and Wood Committee, previous president, ICOMOS Wood Committee, previous president said, "Interesting and good presentation. Thank you so much, Tiina," and so on. There are some thank yous in the web too. So, thank you all.